A 9-year-old girl stepped off the private elevator into Sterling Tower's executive boardroom, raised a small black pistol at billionaire Nathaniel Sterling, and said without trembling, "Help my mother. She's dying," Chloe announced to the room of stunned executives. "And you signed the papers that are going to kill her tonight." Mr. Hayes, Sterling's head of security, slowly raised his hand to the other suits. "Nobody moves," he said carefully, his eyes never leaving the child. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Not until someone admits what you did to my mom," Chloe said, her voice steady as granite. "She told me you'd be here, Mr. Sterling, and she's never wrong about these things." "What's your name?" Nathaniel Sterling asked, slowly kneeling so she didn't have to point the weapon up at him. "Chloe," she said. "My mom is Alara Chen, and she used to clean your numbers until she found the dirty ones. She disappeared 3 days ago after she tried to tell someone the truth." Every executive in that glass-walled room went silent. They all remembered Alara, brilliant data engineer, the woman who made broken spreadsheets tell stories. She'd vanished without explanation after flagging irregularities in their charitable foundation. "Where's your mom now, Chloe?" Hayes asked gently. "Pier 19, on a ship called the Argent Tide," Chloe said, sliding a cracked phone across the polished floor with her foot. "In 2 hours, they're going to cut her open and sell her parts to people who can pay." The temperature in the boardroom dropped 20 degrees. "But she won't tell me who signed the orders," Chloe continued, the gun never wavering. "She just said, 'Show them the evidence and make them choose.'" She gestured at the phone. "That has everything. Transfer codes, shipping manifests, surgical schedules." Sterling picked up the phone with slow, deliberate movements. His face went white as he scrolled through Alara's files. Hayes recognized the sick look of a man seeing his signature on documents he never signed. "Someone forged my authorization," Sterling whispered. "Scared of who?" Hayes asked, though he already suspected. "Alden Cade," Chloe said. "He runs the medical program. He said if she tells anyone about the organ harvesting, he'll make sure I disappear too." A corrupt CFO threatening a data engineer and her child. This just got complicated. Before we dive into this incredible story of courage and corruption, hit subscribe and comment below where you're watching from. Trust me, you'll want to follow this journey to the end. "Chloe, I need you to lower the gun so we can help," Sterling said. "No," she replied. "Someone has to choose a side first." Tears started in her eyes, but the pistol stayed raised. "I can't let them take my mom. Cade already told me what happens to little girls who know too much." The implications of that statement made every man in the room ready to commit murder. Hayes was already on his tablet, fingers flying across the screen. Alden Cade, CFO of Sterling Ventures Medical Division. 3 whistleblower complaints, all buried by legal. Internal audit won't touch him. "He's protected by the board," Hayes continued, his voice darkening. "Same board that approved the Sterling Foundation recovery units." Sterling noticed something crucial. Chloe held the gun with perfect form. Proper grip, finger discipline, steady breathing. "Who taught you to shoot?" "Mom did," she said. "She said I might need it one day." Her voice cracked. "She said if anything happened to her, find the richest man in the building and make him look at what his money really bought." Sterling made a decision that would change everything. "Chloe, I'm going to tell you something important. Every person in this room is going to protect you until we get your mother back." "That doesn't make sense," Chloe protested. "It does in my world," Sterling explained. "You came here for justice, and that's what you'll get from every person here." "But the ship leaves at midnight," Chloe said desperately. "Your mom has 2 hours." "We don't need 2 hours to choose the right side," Hayes stated firmly. Chloe finally lowered the gun slightly. "You promise?" "Sterling Industries doesn't break promises to children," the billionaire said. That's when they heard the elevator chime. Multiple footsteps, getting closer. "Did you call anyone?" Sterling asked Chloe. "No, but Cade has been tracking my mom's phone." "Give me the phone," Hayes commanded. Chloe handed it over. Hayes destroyed it immediately, but it was too late. 8 security guards," announced Miller from the window. "Private contractors, military gear." Alden Cade strode into the boardroom like he owned the place. Tall, expensive suit, with cold eyes that lingered too long on Chloe. "There you are, little one," he said with a predator's smile. "Time to come home." "She's not going anywhere with you," Sterling stated. Cade laughed. 8 armed contractors against a boardroom full of executives? You sure about that?" "She's under my protection," said a voice from behind Hayes. Everyone turned to see Hayes step forward, hand resting on his concealed weapon. 6'2", covered in tactical scars, never backed down from anything. "Excuse me?" Cade said. "This child is under Sterling Industries' protection," Hayes stated. "Touch her and find out what that means." Cade's face darkened. "I have legal authority. The mother signed custody papers." "Custody papers she signed while sedated with fentanyl," Chloe said loudly. "Prove it," Cade challenged. That's when Dr. Patricia Martinez walked into the boardroom. The story would then transition into the backstory, explaining how we got to this moment. Ilara's investigation, the medical conspiracy, and setting up the action sequences to come. Hayes processed the situation in milliseconds. Dr. Martinez in the doorway, Cade's predatory smile, Chloe's trembling gun hand, and 8 contractors who looked like they ate conflict for breakfast. Time to separate the players from the pawns. "Miller, Rodriguez, Patel," Hayes said without taking his eyes off Cade. "Escort the other executives to the 42nd floor. Lock it down. Nobody in or out without my authorization." His 3 most trusted operators moved like clockwork, gently but firmly guiding the pale-faced board members toward the service elevator. Hayes had spent 15 years building this team, and they knew when their boss shifted from protection mode to war mode. "Thompson, Chen, stay with me," Hayes continued. "And activate Protocol 7. Thompson's fingers danced across his tablet. Every camera in the boardroom switched to high-definition recording, feeds automatically mirrored to an off-site vault that even Sterling couldn't access. If things went sideways, the truth would survive. Dr. Martinez stepped forward, medical bag in hand. "I'm Rebecca's doctor," she said, her voice steady despite the obvious tension. "She sent me here with evidence." Cade's contractors shifted, hands drifting toward concealed weapons. Hayes counted exit angles, cover positions, and the distance between Chloe and safety. The girl was still holding the gun, but her hands were starting to shake. "Evidence can be fabricated," Cade said smoothly. "Traumatized children make unreliable witnesses." Hayes was already pulling up the Sterling Foundation's approval chains on his tablet, cross-referencing timestamps and digital signatures. Something had been bothering him since Chloe showed them those documents. "Sir," Hayes said to Sterling, "these authorizations. Look at the metadata." Sterling moved closer, studying Hayes' screen. "What am I looking at?" "Latency anomalies," Hayes replied, his cybersecurity training kicking in. "Your signature appears at 3:47 a.m., but the server logs show you were offline. More specifically, your tablet was powered down and in your penthouse safe." Cade's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Technical glitches happen." Hayes wasn't done. His fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up deeper system logs. "There's more. Biometric key drift. Your thumb signature shows microscopic variations that only appear when..." He paused, the pieces clicking together. "When someone clones a device and uses recorded biometric data instead of live readings." The room went dead quiet except for the hum of the building's systems. "Someone's been impersonating you, sir," Hayes said, "using a shadow server to forge your approvals." Sterling's face went from pale to furious. "Show me." Hayes moved to the art panel behind Sterling's chair, a sleek piece that most people assumed was just expensive decoration. But Hayes knew better. He pressed a hidden sequence, and the panel slid away to reveal a small analog safe. "Analog?" Dr. Martinez asked, surprised. "Sometimes the old ways are the best ways," Hayes replied, inputting the combination. "Digital can be hacked. Analog just is." Inside the safe sat an old dictaphone, the kind reporters used in the 1980 seconds. Hayes pulled out Chloe's cracked phone, found an aux cable, and connected it to the ancient device. "My mom said you'd have something that could play this," Chloe whispered. Hayes pressed play. Ilara's voice filled the boardroom, clear and determined. "If you're hearing this, then Chloe found you, and you've seen the evidence. Cade has been using cloned biometrics and a mirror server to forge approvals. The timestamp on this recording is 2:34 a.m., 3 days ago. Cade just called me and said if I don't disappear, he'll make sure Chloe has an accident at school. I'm going to Pier 19 tonight to confront him. If something happens to me, Nate, remember what you promised that night in the rain. Sometimes mercy costs everything, but it's still the right choice." The recording ended. The silence was deafening. Chloe was trembling now, the gun wavering in her small hands. Hayes moved smoothly, pulling a clean towel from the executive washroom and wrapping it around an ice pack from the minibar. "Here," he he said gently, covering her shaking hands with the wrapped ice. You did good, kid. Your mom would be proud. It was the first purely human gesture he'd made all day, and somehow that made it hit harder. Sterling's secure phone buzzed. The caller ID showed Cade's legal team. Sir, don't, Hayes warned. Sterling answered anyway. What? Even from across the room, Hayes could hear the sharp voice on the other end. Stand down immediately. We'll handle the child. This is a medical emergency requiring specialized intervention. Sterling looked at Chloe, still trembling despite Hayes's care, then at the dictaphone with her mother's desperate plea. Go to hell, Sterling said and hung up. Hayes was back on his tablet, tracking the Argent Tide's movements. Sir, the ship's transponder has been spoofing its location. Coast Guard shows it anchored at Pier 7, but Maritime Traffic Control has it at Pier 19, just like the girl said. How long until it sails? Sterling asked. 97 minutes, Hayes replied. But if they stick to the surgical schedule? 43 minutes, Dr. Martinez finished quietly. Once they begin the procedure, there's no reversing it. Sterling stood up, his decision crystallizing. He walked to the main intercom panel and flipped it to building-wide broadcast. This is Nathaniel Sterling. We have an internal emergency requiring immediate board suspension under Article 47 of our charter. All executive decisions are temporarily centralized to this office. Legal. I need you to preserve all digital records immediately. If anyone tries to delete, transfer, or modify any files in the next 6 hours, you are authorized to physically prevent them. Hayes was already dialing internal affairs. Detective Morrison, this is Hayes at Sterling Tower. We have evidence of corporate fraud, medical kidnapping, and attempted murder. I'm sending you live feeds and recorded evidence now. Cade's phone started buzzing frantically, then the lawyers calling back, then what sounded like a small army moving in the building's lower floors. Sir, Thompson said from his position by the windows. Multiple vehicles arriving. Black SUVs. Government plates. Internal affairs moves fast, Hayes noted with satisfaction. Then Chen's voice cracked over the comms. Boss, we've got a problem. Private security team in the lobby. Military-grade equipment. They're not ours. Hayes looked at Sterling, then at Chloe, who was still clutching the gun despite the ice pack on her hands. How many? Hayes asked. 8 contractors plus support, Chen replied. And sir, they've got legal papers. Something about emergency medical intervention and protective custody. The elevator chimed. Hayes drew his sidearm and positioned himself between Chloe and the doors. Sterling moved to flank, and Dr. Martinez stepped behind the conference table. The doors slid open with mechanical precision. Alden Cade stepped out, flanked by 2 contractors in matching tactical gear. Behind them, 6 more armed men spread out with professional efficiency. Cade's smile was cold as winter steel, and his eyes never left Chloe. Hello, Nathaniel, Cade said pleasantly, as if they were discussing quarterly reports. I believe you have something that belongs to me. Chloe's world narrowed to the space between heartbeats. 8 armed men in tactical gear, Cade's cold smile, and the weight of the pistol in her small hands. She could hear her mother's voice in her memory. 1 shot, baby. Make it count. Stop the hand, not the life. Escort the child and secure the devices, Cade said casually, like he was ordering coffee. The contractors began moving forward, their eyes locked on Chloe's gun. Professional, coordinated, inevitable. But Nate Sterling stepped between them and the conference table. Every camera in this building now, Sterling commanded, his voice carrying the authority of a man who'd built empires. Live feed to every news station in the city. Sterling watched Hayes's fingers fly across his tablet. Within seconds, the boardroom's cameras were broadcasting to every major news network, every social media platform, every digital billboard in the downtown core. The city was watching. Sir, we're live on Channel 7, Fox, CNN, and streaming on Sterling Industries' main page, Hayes reported. 40,000 viewers and climbing. Sterling looked directly into the nearest camera. Ladies and gentlemen, you're witnessing an attempted kidnapping of a child who came to us for help. Her mother is being held against her will on a ship at Pier 19, scheduled for illegal organ harvesting in. He checked his watch. 87 minutes. The contractor captain, a mountain of a man with dead eyes, reached for his sidearm. Chloe didn't hesitate. The crack split the air like breaking ice. The bullet kissed the captain's wrist, spinning his pistol across the polished floor and tearing a hole through the modernist painting behind him. The sound was smaller than she'd expected but seemed to fill every corner of the glass-walled room. Then, silence. Complete, deafening silence. The contractors froze mid-step. Some actually stepped backward, suddenly aware that 40,000 people were watching them threaten a child. The psychology of the room flipped in an instant from predators advancing on prey to men caught in spotlights they couldn't escape. Hayes moved like liquid steel. Weapons on the ground. Now, he commanded, his own sidearm trained on the captain. You're on live television threatening a minor. Every lawyer in the city just became a potential prosecutor. The contractors looked at each other, then at Cade, then at the cameras broadcasting their faces to the world. One by one, they lowered their weapons. Hayes orchestrated their disarmament with surgical precision, each man zip-tied with the kind of efficiency that spoke of military training and years of practice. The clicking of plastic restraints sounded like a countdown timer. Sterling knelt beside Chloe, studying her stance, her breathing, the way she'd controlled the shot. "One round?" he asked quietly. She nodded, lowering the gun slightly. "Mom said one bullet can change everything if you use it right. More than that, and you become the monster." Sterling looked at this 9-year-old girl who'd just executed a perfect disabling shot under pressure, surrounded by trained killers, while 40,000 people watched. She wasn't just brave, she was calculating, trained, prepared. "Your mother taught you well," he said. Behind them, Hayes was forwarding the dictaphone audio and server forensics to Internal Affairs, the police commissioner, and the FBI's cybercrime division. His phone buzzed with an incoming message. "Dr. Martinez," Hayes called out. "You said you had more evidence?" Dr. Patricia Martinez stepped forward, her phone in hand. "I just received surgical prep logs from a colleague on the inside. Ilara Chen is aboard the Argent Tide, conscious and aware. They've prepped her for surgery, but she's fighting the sedation." The words hit Chloe like electricity. Her mom was alive. Awake. Fighting. "She's strong," Chloe whispered, more to herself than anyone else. Hayes's phone erupted with notifications. "Internal Affairs is en route, ETA 12 minutes. Coast Guard is moving to intercept the Argent Tide." Cade, who'd been silent during the chaos, finally stepped toward the elevator. His smile was gone, replaced by something desperate and dangerous. "This isn't over," he said. Hayes moved to block his path one step, casual but absolute. "No," Hayes said simply. The single word carried more authority than a battalion of lawyers. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, sirens began to wail in the distance. Red and blue lights painted the glass like war paint. Sterling checked his watch. 11:16 p.m., 84 minutes until midnight. "Hayes, how long to get to Pier 19? "In normal traffic, 25 minutes. With police escort and emergency lights." Hayes paused, calculating. 15 minutes, maybe 12. "We're not waiting for Internal Affairs," Sterling decided. "That woman has been fighting for her daughter for 3 days. We owe her 12 minutes. Dr. Martinez stepped forward. "If they've started the surgical prep, moving her could be dangerous. She'll need immediate medical attention." "Then you're coming with us," Sterling said. Chloe looked at the adults around her, Hayes with his tactical precision, Sterling with his newfound purpose, doctor. Martinez with her medical bag, even the bound contractors who'd gone from threatening to irrelevant in a single gunshot. "Can I come?" she asked. "Absolutely not," 3 voices said in unison. "She's my mom," Chloe said, her voice steady again. "I started this. I should finish it." Hayes knelt down to her eye level. "You did your job, kid. You got us to listen. You got the city watching. You stopped the bad guys." He gestured at the zip-tied contractors. "Now let the adults handle the dangerous part. But what if something goes wrong? What if she needs to hear my voice?" Sterling saw the calculation in Hayes's eyes, the same math he was running. A traumatized child on a potentially violent rescue mission versus a mother who'd been fighting for days to hear her daughter's voice one more time. The elevators chimed. Internal Affairs agents in tactical gear spilled out, followed by uniformed officers and crime scene technicians. Detective Morrison flashed his badge. "We'll take it from here," Morrison said. "No," Sterling replied. "You'll follow us there." The detective started to protest, but Hayes cut him off. "Sir, with respect, we have live feeds, witness testimony, and a victim who's running out of time. We can coordinate en route, but we're not waiting for paperwork." Morrison looked at the cameras, still broadcasting, At the zip-tied contractors, at the 9-year-old girl holding a smoking gun. Fine, but I'm riding with you. As the adults argued logistics and jurisdiction, Chloe walked to the window overlooking the harbor. Somewhere out there, past the lights and the darkness, her mother was waiting. 84 minutes. She tucked the pistol into her backpack, empty now, but still reassuring, and turned back to the room. I'm coming, she said quietly. And nobody's going to stop me. If you think Chloe deserves to be part of this rescue, smash that like button and let us know in the comments. Should they bring her to Pier 19 or keep her safe? The clock is ticking. Nate Sterling stood in the center of his boardroom, surrounded by internal affairs agents, zip-tied contractors, and the weight of a decision that would either destroy his empire or transform it into something worth saving. Detective Morrison, he said, turning to face the cameras that were still broadcasting live to 60,000 viewers. I'm issuing blanket consent for your investigation. Morrison raised an eyebrow. Sir? Sterling Tower, every server, every subsidiary, every foundation account, search it all. No warrants needed, no legal delays. Sterling pulled out his executive tablet, fingers moving with decisive precision. I'm also suspending board control over all Sterling Foundation operations under Article 23 Emergency Authority, effective immediately, for 24 hours. His legal team would have heart attacks. His shareholders would revolt. His stock would crater by morning. He didn't care. The memory hit him like cold rain 7 years ago, outside the Meridian Hotel. He'd been 28, drunk on his first billion, leaving a charity gala in his Bentley when the accident happened right in front of him. The sedan had slammed into the pedestrian, tires screaming, then sped away into the storm. Sterling had sat frozen behind his wheel, watching a young woman in a hospital scrubs run toward the bleeding stranger on the asphalt. Call 911, she'd shouted at him through the rain. Now. He'd fumbled for his phone, but she was already beside the victim, a homeless man, blood pooling beneath his head. Her hands pressed against the wound with professional precision. Press harder, she'd instructed Sterling when he knelt beside them. Right here. Don't let up. Her voice was steady, authoritative, completely focused on saving a life she'd never met. When the ambulance arrived, Sterling had tried to hand her a blank check. I don't want money, she'd said, rain dripping from her dark hair. I want you to remember this feeling. The next time someone needs help, choose mercy without asking what it costs. What's your name? He'd asked. She'd smiled, tired but genuine. Alara, like the moon. Back in the present, Sterling looked at Chloe, Alara's daughter, holding the same steady courage her mother had shown that night. He activated the building-wide intercom system. This is Nathaniel Sterling speaking to all Sterling Industries employees. We have discovered evidence of systematic fraud within our medical foundation. Digital approvals bearing my authorization have been compromised. Effective immediately, I'm ordering all departments to preserve and secure their data. Do not delete, transfer, or modify any files. If anyone attempts to interfere with this preservation, you are authorized to report them directly to Internal Affairs. He paused, looking directly into the camera. I'm also offering complete whistleblower immunity for the next 24 hours. If you have information about fraudulent activities within any Sterling subsidiary, now is the time to come forward. No retaliation, no legal consequences, no NDAs. Cade, still restrained but defiant, let out a bitter laugh. Congratulations, Nathaniel. You just tanked shareholder value by 30%. The board will have your head by morning. Sterling turned to face him, and for the first time in years, felt completely certain about his response. People have value, Alden. More than stocks, more than quarterly reports, more than your goddamn profit margins. The silence in the room was electric. Hayes's radio crackled. All units, Internal Affairs is in the building. Service elevators, main elevators, and stairwells secured. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Sterling could see more police vehicles arriving, their red and blue lights painting the tower's glass facade like a kaleidoscope of justice. Detective Morrison stepped forward, his team of agents moving with military precision. Mr. Sterling, we'll need access to everything, Sterling interrupted. Server rooms, executive files, foundation accounts, offshore holdings. Hayes will give you the access codes. Morrison looked stunned. Sir, you understand this could implicate you personally in... I understand that a woman is about to die because someone used my name and my company to commit murder, Sterling said. If I'm complicit, then I'll face the consequences. But right now, our priority is saving Alara Chen. Hayes was coordinating with the agents when his secure phone buzzed. He answered immediately. Dr. Martinez here. The voice came through the speaker. I just received word from my contact aboard the Argent Tide. The surgical team has scrubbed in. They're beginning prep procedures. The room went dead silent. How long? Sterling asked. 20 minutes, maybe less, once they make the first incision. She didn't need to finish. Everyone understood. Hayes checked his watch. 11:27. If we leave now, emergency escort, we can reach Pier 19 inches 15 minutes. Coast Guard? Sterling asked. 2 cutters converging on the ship's position, but they can't board without probable cause, and Cade's people have legal cover for the medical procedures. Sterling felt the weight of every second ticking by. Alara had saved a stranger's life in the rain 7 years ago. Now her own daughter was asking him to return that mercy. We go now, he decided. Morrison, you can investigate from the scene. Detective Morrison nodded. My team will coordinate with Coast Guard. But if this goes sideways... It won't, Sterling said with more confidence than he felt. Hayes was already gathering tactical equipment, his team moving with efficient precision. He turned to Chloe, who'd been silent through the entire exchange. You're coming with us or staying here? Hayes asked her directly. Every adult in the room held their breath. Sterling knew what the safe answer was, what the responsible answer was, what the legal answer was. Chloe looked at Hayes, then at Sterling, then at the camera that was broadcasting her words to the world. Wherever you go to bring my mom back, she said simply. Sterling saw himself in her determined face, the same calculation, the same willingness to risk everything for what mattered most. But where he'd built walls of wealth and power around his choices, she stood exposed and fearless. Then we go together, Sterling said. Hayes was already moving toward the elevator, talking rapidly into his radio. All units, we're mobile in 2 minutes. Destination Pier 19, Priority Alpha Rescue Mission. As they prepared to leave, Sterling took one last look around his boardroom, the place where he'd made millions in decisions, where profit margins had always been the primary language. Tonight, the only numbers that mattered were on Chloe's cracked phone screen, the coordinates of her mother's location and the countdown timer showing 17 minutes until midnight. Hayes felt the weight of 17 minutes pressing against his chest as their convoy screamed through the industrial district toward the harbor. Rain spat against the windshield of the lead vehicle, and through the passenger window, he could see the skeletal silhouettes of loading cranes reaching into the storm clouds like metallic fingers grasping at heaven. Pier 19 stretched out into black water under harsh sodium lamps that turned the rain into falling needles of light. Tugboats sat idle at their moorings, their crews long gone for the night. At the end of the longest dock, the Argent Tide waited a gray freighter that looked clean and innocent under the floodlights, but Hayes knew better. Evil rarely announced itself with warning signs. Command, this is Hayes. Visual on target. The ship's running lights are on, but I see movement on deck. They're preparing to cast off. Detective Morrison's voice crackled through the radio from the second vehicle. Coast Guard cutters Valiant and Steadfast are in position, but they need probable cause to board. They'll have it in 30 seconds, Hayes replied, watching his tablet as the real-time feeds from their approach lit up his screen. Behind him, Sterling sat rigid in his executive suit, looking like a billionaire who'd accidentally wandered into a war zone. But his eyes were focused, determined. The man had made his choice. Chloe sat in the command van, drowning in a Kevlar vest that was 3 sizes too big for her 9-year-old frame. Through the rain-streaked windows, she could see the ship where her mother was being held. It looked impossibly huge, impossibly far away. Her fingers found the locket her mother had given her, the one with their picture inside, taken on Chloe's 8th birthday. Hold on, Mom, she thought. We're coming. The radio chatter was constant, codes and coordinates that she didn't understand, but that made her feel like she was part of something bigger than her fear. Hayes coordinated the converging forces with the precision of a conductor leading a deadly symphony. Internal affairs agents took positions along the dock approaches. Harbor police surrounded the pier with searchlights that could blind a satellite. Coast Guard cutters flanked the ship from the water. His own team, the best private security money could buy, prepared for close-quarters combat. All units, this is Control. Morrison's voice boomed through the loudspeakers directed at the ship. This is the Metro Police Department with federal warrants. You are ordered to cease all activities and prepare for lawful boarding. The response was immediate and predictable. The Argent Tide's engines rumbled to life, black smoke belching from its stacks. Deck lights blazed as crew members rushed to release the mooring lines. "They're running," Hayes observed calmly. That's when the harbor came alive. The tugboats that had appeared idle suddenly roared to life, swinging out from their berths in a carefully choreographed box formation. Hayes allowed himself a small smile. Sterling's money had bought them more than cooperation. It had bought them preparation. "Coast Guard, you are authorized for interdiction," Morrison radioed. The two cutters moved like sharks, cutting through the black water. The lead vessel deployed a foam line directly into the Argent Tide's prop wash, creating a barrier that would foul the ship's propellers if they tried to power through. The freighter was trapped. Hayes checked his watch. 11 minutes until midnight. "Go, go, go!" 3 teams hit the ship simultaneously. Morrison's IA agents took the bridge approach, climbing the main gangway with shields and tactical lights. Coast Guard boarded from the stern, securing the engine room and crew quarters. Hayes led his team through the forward service entrance, heading directly for the ship's medical bay. The corridors were sterile white, like a hospital had been grafted onto a cargo vessel. Hayes's tactical training kicked in narrow hallways meant limited escape routes, but also kill funnels if defenders were waiting. His radio crackled with updates as the teams spread through the ship. "Bridge secured. Captain in custody. Engine room clear. We have the crew." "Hayes, this is Morrison. We found the server room. Holy shit, there are files here going back 3 years." But Hayes was focused on one thing: finding Alara Chen before someone decided she was too much of a liability to keep breathing. In the command van, Chloe pressed her face against the window, watching the tactical lights sweep through the ship like searching stars. Hayes reached the medical corridor just as his earpiece crackled with Dr. Martinez's voice. "Hayes, I'm aboard. Service gangway deck C. I can hear surgical equipment running." "Status on our target?" Moving toward the sound. "Stand by." Hayes and his 2-man team advanced down the corridor, their weapons drawn but not aggressive. They passed empty examination rooms, a small pharmacy, what looked like a recovery ward with restraint beds. Then Dr. Martinez's voice whispered through the comms, barely audible but electric with relief. "I found her. She's awake." Hayes felt his chest loosen for the first time in an hour. "Condition?" "Conscious, alert, furious as hell. They've got her prepped for surgery, but she's fighting the sedation. Wait." The line went quiet. Hayes keyed his mic. "Martinez, report." "Nothing." "Dr. Martinez, respond." In the silence, Hayes heard something that made his blood freeze. Metal footsteps, deliberate and heavy, approaching Dr. Martinez's position from behind. Hayes broke into a run, his team flanking him as they moved through the ship's narrow corridors. The medical bay was 3 decks down, and every second counted. His radio exploded with chatter. "Control, we have a problem. Armed personnel moving through the lower decks." "Hayes, where's your position?" "Medical bay, 90 seconds out." Through his earpiece, barely audible, he heard Dr. Martinez whisper, "They know I'm here." Then the transmission cut to static. Hayes ran harder, his weapon ready, his mind calculating angles and cover positions. Behind him, Sterling's voice came through the radio from the command center. "Hayes, whatever you need. Whatever it costs. Just need 30 more seconds, sir." The metal footsteps were getting closer to Dr. Martinez's position. Hayes could hear them now, even through the walls, deliberate, hunting, closing in. In the command van, Chloe heard the radio chatter and felt her world tilting. The adults around her were tense, leaning forward, hands on weapons. "What's happening?" she asked. Hayes's voice came through the speakers, tight with controlled urgency. "We're bringing your mother home, kid. Stay strong." Hayes reached the medical bay entrance as a scream echoed through the ship's corridors, not pain, but defiance. A woman's voice, strong and angry and very much alive. Alara Chen was fighting back. The rescue team has found Alara, but now they're in danger too. If you think Hayes can get there in time, hit that subscribe button and let us know in the comments. Who do you think is hunting Doctor Martinez through the ship? This is getting intense. The IV tape burned against Alara's skin like liquid fire, but her mind was crystal clear. Whatever sedative they'd been pumping into her system had worn off an hour ago, leaving her strapped to a cold surgical table, listening to footsteps and voices planning her dismemberment like she was already dead. She wasn't dead. Not yet. When Dr. Martinez slipped through the surgical bay door, her hands shaking as she fumbled with a medical kit, Alara kept her voice calm and steady. Cut the elbow restraint first, Alara whispered. Then ankle. The chest strap makes noise when it releases, save that for last. Dr. Martinez's hands were trembling so badly she could barely hold the medical scissors. They could come back any second. Then move faster, Alara said, her data engineer's mind automatically calculating efficiency. 2 cuts, minimal sound, maximum mobility. You can do this. The first restraint snapped with a soft click. Alara felt circulation returning to her right arm like electricity flowing back into a circuit. 3 decks above, Hayes burst into the server room just as the ship's surgeon and quartermaster were frantically typing commands into a wall of blinking servers. Data purge initiated, the quartermaster announced. 30 seconds to total wipe. Hayes didn't hesitate. He yanked the fiber optic cable from the main server with one hand and drew his sidearm with the other. Step away from the equipment. The surgeon sneered. Too late. Everything's encrypted and will be gone in 20 seconds. Hayes holstered his weapon and physically ripped a RAID storage sled from its mounting, sparks flying as connections tore loose. His body cam captured every second as he secured the drive in an evidence bag. Not everything, Hayes said calmly. Analog backups are a beautiful thing. Alara sat up on the surgical table, pulling IV lines from her arms with the same methodical precision she used to debug corrupted data. Her body ached, her vision swam slightly, but her fury burned clean and bright. You took your time, she said to Dr. Martinez, who was staring at her in amazement. We came as fast as we could, your daughter. Chloe, Alara's voice cracked for the first time. Is she safe? She's the reason we found you. She walked into Sterling's boardroom with a gun and demanded he help. Despite everything, the kidnapping, the torture, the hours strapped to a table waiting to be carved up, Alara smiled. That's my girl. Hayes appeared in the doorway with a young internal affairs agent, both of them sweeping the room with tactical precision. Ma'am, we need to move, the agent said. This area isn't secure. Alara swung her legs off the table, testing her balance. Wobbly, but functional. The evidence. Hayes held up an evidence bag containing forged consent forms and what looked like shipping manifests. Got it. Plus the encrypted drives before they could purge them. There's more, Alara said, pointing to a locked cabinet. Analog files. Cade didn't trust everything to digital. The IA agent kicked the cabinet door open, revealing stacks of manila folders with coded patient numbers and destination ports marked in different countries. Chloe stood at the command van's window, her Kevlar vest still too big, her small hands pressed against the glass as figures emerged from the ship. Police officers, Coast Guard personnel, suspects in handcuffs. Then she saw her. Alara appeared at the top of the gangway, flanked by Hayes and Dr. Martinez, walking under her own power despite the hospital gown and the exhaustion written across her face. Mom! Chloe burst from the van before anyone could stop her. She ran across the rain-slicked pier, her oversized vest bouncing with each step. Behind her, she could hear Sterling and Morrison calling her name, but she didn't care. Her mother was alive, walking, real. Alara saw her coming and broke away from her escort, dropping to one knee on the pier just as Chloe crashed into her arms. Baby girl, Alara whispered, her voice thick with emotion. You did so good. So good. The city's docks pulsed around them with red and blue emergency lights, turning the rain into falling crystals of color. Ships' horns echoed across the harbor like a song of rescue and justice. I was scared, Chloe admitted, her face buried in her mother's shoulder. I know, but you were brave anyway. That's what courage really is. Holding her daughter, feeling Chloe's heartbeat against her chest, Alara allowed herself exactly 30 seconds of pure relief. Then the data engineer in her kicked back in. Hayes, she called out. The manifests we recovered, did you see the scope of this? Hayes approached, his tablet in hand. Initial analysis shows dozens of debt wellness participants across 7 countries. Some of these shipping records go back 3 years. Alara looked at the coded initials that IA was beginning to decrypt on their screens. These aren't just patient numbers, they're inventory tracking, human inventory. Detective Morrison joined them, his face grim. How many victims are we looking at? Conservative estimate based on shipping frequency and port rotation? Alara's mind ran the numbers automatically. Minimum 200, probably closer to 300. The pier went silent except for the sound of rain on metal and the distant rumble of the city. This just became an international trafficking case, Morrison said quietly. That's when the media circus arrived. News vans screamed onto the pier, their satellite dishes extending like mechanical flowers blooming toward the sky. Reporters and camera crews spilled out, drawn by the live feeds that had been broadcasting the rescue operation. Sterling stepped forward to shield Alara and Chloe from the cameras, but a new voice cut through the chaos. "I have an injunction." A man in an expensive suit pushed through the crowd of reporters, waving legal documents. "Court order suspending all evidence collection pending review." "My client's rights." "Cade's lawyer," Hayes muttered. Commissioner Williams stepped forward, his presence commanding enough to quiet the pier. "Injunction denied," he announced loudly enough for the cameras to catch. "Federal trafficking warrants supersede local court orders." The lawyer's face went pale. "My client will appeal." "Your client can appeal from federal prison," Williams replied. But Hayes was already on his radio, his voice tight with concern. "Sterling Tower, this is Hayes. Confirm Cade is still in custody." The response made everyone's blood freeze. "Negative. Suspect slipped his restraints during prisoner transport," Bolo issued. "Cade is in the wind." Still in her mother's arms, Chloe felt the adults around them tense like a pack of wolves catching a dangerous scent. "What does that mean?" she asked. Alara's grip tightened protectively. "It means the fight isn't over yet." Sterling stood alone in his boardroom at 1:47 a.m., the space transformed from a temple of corporate power into something resembling a military command center. Laptops hummed on every surface. Federal agents coordinated through encrypted channels, and evidence bags lined the conference table like accusations waiting to be answered. The city spread out below him through the floor-to-ceiling windows, lights twinkling in the rain like fallen stars. Somewhere out there, Cade was running, and 300 victims were waiting for justice. Sterling walked to the analog safe, still open from earlier, and placed Chloe's small black pistol inside next to the dictaphone. The gun that had started everything, that had forced him to choose sides in a war he'd been too comfortable to notice. He pressed play on the dictaphone one more time. "Choose mercy without asking what it costs." Alara's voice from 7 years ago, standing in the rain over a bleeding stranger, the same woman whose daughter had just held a gun to his head to save her mother's life. Sterling pulled out his personal phone and dialed his private banker. "Richard? It's Nate Sterling. I know what time it is. I need you to liquidate 40% of my personal portfolio. Not the company holdings, mine. Yes, 40%. Market open. No, not for an acquisition. I'm seeding a victim's trust fund. And Richard? This goes on my name, not Sterling Industries. I want everyone to know this is personal." Alden Cade moved through the Meridian Financial Building's 32nd floor like a ghost, his executive badge still granting him access to partner firm resources. The sky bridge to the Hamilton Tower would get him to the parking garage, then to his offshore accounts, then to a private airfield. He'd planned for this contingency. 3 years of skimming from the medical program had funded multiple escape routes. The sky bridge stretched ahead of him, a glass tunnel suspended over the city street, usually crowded with executives but empty at this hour. Freedom was 50 yards away. Behind him, elevator doors chimed. "Alden Cade, you're under arrest." Internal affairs agents in tactical gear, moving with lethal precision. How had they found him so fast? Hayes appeared on Sterling's secure video link from the pier, his face grim but satisfied. Building telemetry caught his badge ping. "I've been tracking executive access cards since this started old habit from security work. IA intercepted him on the Meridian Skybridge 20 minutes ago. Status on the contractors?" "Flipping faster than playing cards," Hayes replied. "Turns out mercenaries don't have much loyalty when faced with federal trafficking charges. Thompson's already given up the supply chain. Rodriguez confessed to 3 previous medical transports. And Martinez." Hayes paused, checking his notes. "Martinez rolled on the whole operation. Names, dates, offshore accounts." Sterling felt a grim satisfaction. "The surgeon from the ship?" Dr. Kovac. Sang like a canary the moment we showed him the mandatory sentencing guidelines for organ trafficking. Admitted to taking orders directly from Cade for 18 months. We have secure chat logs, encrypted payment records, even voicemails. On another screen, Detective Morrison was coordinating with Interpol, spreading the investigation to medical facilities in 7 countries. The scope was staggering: hundreds of victims, millions in illicit revenue, a network that reached from American hospitals to European organ markets. Sterling activated his building-wide address system one final time. "This is Nathaniel Sterling, 3 hours ago, we discovered systematic fraud and human trafficking within our medical foundation. I want to be clear, this was not a failure of oversight. This was a failure of leadership. My leadership. He looked directly into the camera, knowing his words would be replayed on every business channel by morning. I built a company so large that I lost track of its extremities. I delegated responsibility without ensuring accountability. I trusted systems more than people, and that trust was weaponized against the most vulnerable patients in our care. His legal team would be calling in 3 minutes to tell him to stop talking. He didn't care. Effective immediately, I'm establishing the Alara Chen Victims Trust with an initial funding of $200 million from my personal assets. I'm also inviting Ms. Chen to chair a temporary oversight board with full authority to restructure our medical programs. This board will have access to every file, every account, and every decision made by Sterling Industries' medical divisions. Cade sat in the federal holding cell, his expensive suit wrinkled, his carefully maintained composure finally cracking. Through the reinforced glass, he could see IA agents wheeling in boxes of evidence seized from his office. 27 offshore accounts frozen. 14 partner facilities raided simultaneously across 4 time zones. A digital trail that led investigators directly to his personal signatures on every forged document. He'd been so careful with the digital encryption, he'd never imagined they'd find the analog backups. Sterling's phone buzzed with notifications, stock prices falling, board members calling emergency meetings, major shareholders demanding explanations. He turned the phone off. For 15 years, he'd managed his reputation like a portfolio, carefully balancing public perception against private profit. He'd built hospitals and called it charity while skimming administrative fees. He'd funded clinics while delegating their oversight to men like Cade who saw patients as inventory. He'd loved the idea of being a savior without doing the work of actually saving people. Hayes appeared in the doorway, no longer just head of security but something closer to a partner in reconstruction. "Sir, there's one more thing. IA found something in the tower's sub-basement, a room that doesn't appear on any building schematics. They took the service elevator down past the parking levels, past the mechanical floors, to a level that officially didn't exist. Hayes led him through a maintenance corridor to an unmarked steel door. Building services found this during the evidence sweep. Cade had a private access card. The door opened to reveal a small, cold room lined with filing cabinets. Old-fashioned manila folders, the kind bureaucrats used before everything went digital. Analog backup ledgers, Hayes explained. Financial records, client lists, payment schedules, going back 5 years. Sterling opened the nearest cabinet. Inside, precise handwriting documenting payments to something called the Maritime Recovery Fund, shipping manifests, client codes that matched the encrypted files from the Argent Tide. And at the bottom of one ledger, a list of patient initials with dates and dollar amounts. Sterling's blood went cold as he found the entry he'd been dreading. E.L. the 15th of March, 2024, $2, 3M, priority harvest, approved, A.K. Alara's initials, dated 3 days ago, the night she'd disappeared. She wasn't just investigating the trafficking, Sterling realized. She was targeted specifically. Cade planned to sell her organs from the beginning. Hayes nodded grimly. The whole whistleblower gets too close scenario was theater. He'd marked her for harvesting the moment she started asking questions about the financial irregularities. Sterling closed the ledger, his hands shaking with controlled rage. How many others? We're still counting. But Sterling? Hayes looked at him directly. This room proves premeditation. First-degree trafficking charges. Cade just graduated from white-collar criminal to serial killer. The room fell silent except for the hum of the building's ventilation system and the distant sound of the city that never slept. The hospital room at St. Mary's smelled like antiseptic and justice. Alara sat propped against pillows, her testimony being recorded by 3 different agencies while Dr. Martinez checked her vitals for the 4th time in 2 hours. The trafficking operation ran on a debt trap model, Alara explained to the federal prosecutor, her voice steady despite the exhaustion. Patients were enrolled in wellness programs that created artificial medical debt, then offered organ donation as debt forgiveness. When they defaulted, which the system was designed to ensure they became involuntary donors. Detective Morrison leaned forward. How long had this been operating? Based on the financial patterns I traced, at least 3 years. Minimum 200 victims, probably more. The Argent Tide was just one of 7 mobile surgical units. Dr. Martinez nodded grimly from the corner. I can corroborate the medical procedures. I've seen similar surgical prep logs at 3 other facilities in my network. The consistency suggests systematic training and standardized protocols. Chloe dozed in the hospital chair beside her mother's bed, her small fist wrapped around the locket her mom had given her. The adults had been talking for hours using words like testimony and prosecution and federal charges, but all Chloe really cared about was the steady sound of her mother's voice. She was alive. She was talking. She was angry in that focused way that meant she was going to fix something that was broken. Through her half-closed eyes, Chloe watched the lawyers and investigators scribble notes, but her attention kept drifting to the window where dawn was starting to paint the sky pink and gold. When the officials finally left, Alara and Chloe were alone for the first time since the pier. Alara patted the hospital bed, and Chloe climbed up carefully, settling against her mother's side like she used to do during thunderstorms. Baby, we need to talk about what happened in that boardroom. Chloe's grip tightened on her locket. Am I in trouble? No, sweetheart, you're not in trouble. But I need to explain why I taught you to shoot. And why I'm sorry I had to. Alara chose her words carefully. I taught you one shot to stop a hand, not a life, because sometimes the world puts children in impossible situations. You used that training exactly right. You stopped the threat without becoming something you're not. But I was scared, Chloe admitted. Being scared doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. Alara smoothed her daughter's hair. But I'm sorry you had to be the adult in that room. I'm sorry you had to save me instead of me protecting you. That's not how it should work. Chloe looked up at her mother. Will it happen again? Not if I can help it. I promise you a future where you get to be a kid, where adults handle the dangerous things, where you never have to point a gun at anyone ever again. A soft knock interrupted them. Hayes stood in the doorway, looking different, somehow less like a corporate security chief, and more like a man who'd made a difficult decision. May I come in? Alara nodded. Hayes entered and did something unexpected. He removed his earpiece, the symbol of his connection to Sterling Industries, and set it on the bedside table. I quit on camera tonight, he announced. Effective immediately, I'm no longer Sterling's head of security. Chloe sat up straighter. Why? Hayes looked directly at her. Because I want to work for someone who puts people first. Your mom is going to be running a trust to help victims and prevent this from happening again. I'd like to work for her, if she'll have me. Alara studied his face. What's the catch? No catch. I answer to your board, follow your mission, protect the people you're trying to help. Hayes turned to Chloe. And I promise you this. When you call, I answer. Any time, any day, for any reason. Over the next 18 hours, Alara watched from her hospital bed as the story exploded across every media platform. The live footage of a 9-year-old confronting a billionaire had been viewed 12 million times. The rescue operation trended globally. But more importantly, people were responding. Her phone, a new one Hayes had provided, rang constantly with calls from whistleblowers at other medical facilities. Dr. Martinez coordinated with colleagues who'd seen similar wellness programs at hospitals across the country. The Trust's hotline, set up by Hayes in a matter of hours, received over 300 calls in the first day. Legal aid clinics from 7 states volunteered to represent victims pro bono. Medical schools offered free examinations for anyone who'd been enrolled in debt trap programs. International human rights organizations reached out to coordinate with similar investigations in Europe and Southeast Asia. When Nathaniel Sterling appeared in her hospital room doorway, he came alone, no lawyers, no security detail, no media handlers, just a billionaire in a wrinkled suit who looked like he hadn't slept in 36 hours. Miss Chen, he said formally. I'd like to speak with you, if you're willing. Alara gestured to the chair beside her bed. Chloe, this is Mr. Sterling, the man you pointed the gun at. Chloe studied him with the serious expression she used when evaluating adults. Are you going to help my mom fix things? I'm going to try, Sterling said simply. That's why I'm here. He turned to Alara. I didn't know what Cade was doing, but I should have. I built a system that allowed it to happen, and that makes me responsible. Alara appreciated the directness. What are you proposing? Sterling pulled out a tablet and showed her a legal document. Complete operational control of Sterling Foundation's medical division transfers to an independent oversight council. You chair that council. Full access to all accounts, all facilities, all personnel decisions. The foundation answers to you, not to me. For how long? Permanently, if that's what it takes to ensure this never happens again. Alara read through the document carefully, her data engineer's mind processing the implications. This gives me authority to audit, restructure, and even shut down programs that don't meet ethical standards. Yes. And you're willing to put that on record, knowing it could implicate you personally in ongoing investigations. Sterling nodded. I'm willing to face whatever consequences come from building a system that enabled Cade to hurt people. As Chloe watched her mother sign the documents that would transform Sterling's medical empire, Hayes's phone buzzed with an urgent message. His face went tight as he read. Ma'am, we have a problem. Sterling's board filed an emergency motion to invalidate all transfers made during the crisis period. They're claiming duress and corporate sabotage. Alara looked up from the signature page. What does that mean? Emergency court hearing at dawn. If they win, everything reverts to the old system. Cade-era oversight gets reinstated, and the trust loses all authority. The room went silent except for the steady beep of hospital monitors and the distant sound of the city waking up. At 6:47 a.m., Sterling sat in the federal courthouse watching Judge Patricia Hendricks review evidence that would either validate the most important decision of his life or hand his company back to the vultures. The Sterling Industries Board had arrived with a squadron of lawyers, arguing that transfers made under terrorist threat were legally invalid. They claimed Chloe's gun had constituted duress, that Sterling's decisions were compromised by trauma. Judge Hendricks listened to their arguments with the patience of someone who'd seen every corporate dodge in the book. Then she asked the prosecutor to play Alara's analog recording. The courtroom fell silent as Alara's voice filled the space. Choose mercy without asking what it costs. This recording, Judge Hendricks noted, predates the boardroom incident by 3 days. It establishes clear evidence of criminal activity and Mr. Sterling's moral obligation to act. She turned to the internal affairs footage from the ship raid. The court has reviewed 17 hours of body camera footage, showing systematic human trafficking, forged documents, and attempted murder. These facts exist independent of any alleged duress. Sterling felt the room's energy shift. Motion denied. All transfers stand. Furthermore, this court is recommending federal charges against any board member who attempts to obstruct ongoing trafficking investigations. Hayes watched from the gallery as Sterling's board members filed out of the courthouse like beaten dogs. 3 submitted resignation letters before reaching the parking garage. The others would be gone by noon, replaced by oversight professionals who answered to Alara's trust rather than quarterly profits. His phone buzzed with updates from the multi-agency task force. Cade indicted on 47 counts of trafficking, fraud, and attempted murder. Bail denied. 7 international medical facilities raided simultaneously across 4 countries. 73 victims identified and relocated to legitimate medical care. $2.3 billion in fraudulent transactions frozen across 23 offshore accounts. But the call that mattered most came from Dr. Martinez. Hayes, the first rescued patients are being reunited with their families today. We have buses arriving at St. Mary's Hospital in 2 hours. From her hospital room window, Alara watched the buses arrive. Families who'd been told their loved ones had died during routine procedures, embracing survivors who'd been rescued from mobile surgical units. Children reuniting with parents. Spouses seeing faces they'd been told they'd never see again. Dr. Martinez appeared in her doorway. The first wave of international cooperation requests just came through. Medical boards in 12 countries want our trafficking protocols. The European Union is drafting legislation based on your debt trap analysis. Alara felt the weight of transformation. What had started as her personal investigation into financial irregularities had become a global reform movement. Ma'am? Hayes joined them. Mr. Sterling is requesting a private meeting. Just you, him, and Chloe. In the boardroom where this all started. The boardroom looked different in the soft morning light. Less like a place where powerful men made terrible decisions and more like a room where people might actually help each other. Chloe carried her small backpack, the one that had held her mother's phone and the gun that had changed everything. The pistol was still inside, unloaded now, but somehow still important. Mr. Sterling was sitting on the floor beside the windows, looking out at the city, not in his big chair behind the conference table, but down at her level. I have something for you, Chloe said. She pulled out the pistol and placed it carefully in Sterling's open hands. I don't need this anymore, she explained. The bad man is in jail, and my mom is safe. Sterling accepted the weapon with the same care he'd shown when kneeling in front of her that first night. He walked to the analog safe still open, still holding the dictaphone that had recorded her mother's voice, and locked the gun away. "And I have something for you." He handed Chloe a key card. Not a temporary visitor's pass, but a real employee access card with her name on it. "This opens your mother's new office. Floor 43, corner suite, view of the harbor. When you want to visit, when you want to see how we're fixing things, when you just want to make sure we're keeping our promises." Sterling sat back down on the floor beside Chloe, both of them looking out at the city through the massive windows. The same position they'd been in 12 hours ago, when she'd held a gun and demanded justice. Now they sat as equals, two people who'd changed each other, changed the company, changed how power would be held accountable in this glass tower. "Mr. Sterling?" Chloe asked. "Are you really going to let my mom be in charge of the medical foundation?" "Your mom's going to be in charge," he confirmed. "I'm just going to make sure she has everything she needs to do the job right." That evening, Chloe stood at her mother's new office window, looking out at the harbor lights twinkling like fallen stars. She thought about the sound a single shot makes in a room full of men smaller than you think, but larger than all of them. She'd fired one bullet and saved her mother. But more than that, she'd fired one bullet and forced powerful people to choose between money and mercy. Alara looked at the city she'd almost been forced to leave and chose to stay. Her new desk was covered with financial ledgers, medical records, and reform proposals that would take years to implement. But they would be implemented. Every number would be checked. Every program would be audited. Every patient would be protected. The ledgers would finally tell a better story. Hayes sat at his new desk in the Trust's operations center, a line of phones labeled with different crisis hotlines. When the first call came in, a nurse from Detroit reporting suspicious surgical quotas, he answered before the second ring. "Alara Chen Victims Trust, this is Hayes. How can we help?" The city hummed below Sterling Tower, but something fundamental had shifted in its rhythm. The rescue had become reform. A child's desperate plea had become a practice of accountability that would outlive all of them. And in a quiet boardroom high above the lights, a small girl's courage had forced power to look itself in the eye and choose differently. That's how a 9-year-old girl with one bullet changed an entire corporate empire and saved hundreds of lives. If this story of courage and justice moved you, subscribe to our channel and click the next video to see more incredible stories of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Don't forget to comment below. What would you do if you had to choose between safety and saving someone you love? Thank you for watching, and remember, sometimes mercy costs everything, but it's always the right choice. Click on the next video on your screen for another amazing story.